He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine.
Former Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi went viral earlier today when she sternly but correctly called out an MSNBC host who was trying to downplay Donald Trump's poor economic record, and it was glorious. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, this was awesome. We talk about all the time how we want Democrats, particularly Democratic politicians, to start bringing the fire and the ferocity in both congressional hearings and also interviews and just on the campaign trail in general. Nancy Pelosi, who still serves as a Democratic congresswoman, she's just no longer a member of the Democratic leadership. She went on MSNBC to do an interview with Katy Tur, an MSNBC host who has said some questionable things in the past in the both sidesy false equivalence arena in a way which lends itself well to Republican talking points. More on that later. And Pelosi, during the interview, they discussed a wide variety of things from college protests to the 2024 election. And when the topic turned to the election, Nancy Pelosi made a point of reminding Katy Tur and those watching that Donald Trump just has an objectively terrible economic record compared to President Biden. And then this exchange happened.
There's nothing in his performance, if that's the word we'll use, what he has done, that would indicate that he cares, prioritizes, or ever valued or did anything to support a democracy. And now on the ballot saying he should have immunity from whatever he might do. I mean, really, I have sympathy and respect for everybody who votes. I'm glad people vote. I know some of them will always reject those of us who may look different to them in leadership or the rest, and that's that. But there are those who have real legitimate concerns about immigration, globalization, innovation, and what does that mean for their job and their family's future? And we have to address those concerns. And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. And
I
he
don't
has
think
the
that
worst.
Anybody can accuse me of that.
Let me just say, as a Speaker of the House, we put forth a $3 trillion bill. $3 trillion of investment in communities and the rest, and that stimulates the economy.
I just want to ask one more question.
So again, a stern rebuke by Nancy Pelosi, and one that was richly deserved because Katy Tur actually has a history of Trump sympathizing, MAGA sympathizing talking points. I want to play you one such example, and then we'll address the merits of Speaker Pelosi's arguments.
Basically, they said they went back over 70 years and looked at all the cases that have been tried under this rule 36 or 6312, which is used here, which doesn't have to show harm done. That's not the burden. You don't have to show that anybody was hurt by your practices. There's nobody you defrauded specifically. But they went back and they looked at cases over 70 years. I believe it was about 150 cases, and found that there was no case where there was a ban on doing business where there wasn't harm shown. So even though the threshold is harm shown, in the past, it has only been used to ban someone doing business when it's been shown that somebody was hurt. Say you're selling cosmetics that are poisoning you. There's somebody that was hurt there, the cosmetics company gets banned. Is this fair to go after Donald Trump like this in this environment?
So Katy Tur, again, there are other clips out there. She has this history, again, of like these centrist talking points in a way that try to, she asks questions in a way which tries to depict Donald Trump in a more sympathetic light. She doesn't do it all the time, but this is not the first time. And this is part of the reason why that clip with Nancy Pelosi has gone viral, because Katy Tur has earned herself a lot of online critics, and understandably so. For what it's worth, the RNC Research, one of the official accounts of the Republican Party, as well as the GOP official account, they tried to run with this in a way that shows that Nancy Pelosi's wrong. Yikes, crazy Nancy Pelosi snaps at Katy Tur for reminding her that Biden's job gains are really jobs recovered from the pandemic. And of course, this is the problem. The Republican Party just straight up lied to those of you on Twitter, to those of us on Twitter. So I'm actually going to play this clip from Cap Action. I had not seen it before today, and it's actually relatively old, but the data here is still accurate because it addresses pre-pandemic levels of employment. It was made over a year ago, but I'd never seen a video quite like this, and I think it was very well done. We're going to play the clip, and it contextualizes the GOP's lies, as well as the claim that President Biden has added jobs to the economy. 15 million jobs added on his watch at the time of this recording. But the recording we're about to watch was made more than a year ago. The logic still stands. We'll play it and unpack it together.
Under President Biden, we've added over 12 million jobs, more than any president's first 2 years in office. That's a historic accomplishment.
No. These are jobs coming back after the pandemic.
Sure, but the U.S. already recovered the 22 million jobs lost at the peak of the pandemic last August, under Biden's leadership.
Without the pandemic, Biden's jobs numbers wouldn't even compare to Trump's.
Okay, let's compare apples to apples then. Before the pandemic, Trump averaged 182,000 jobs a month, riding on the economic progress of the previous administration. Thanks, Obama. On the other end, Biden is averaging 349,000 jobs a month since the pandemic job recovery was complete. That means that the American workforce under Biden is even stronger than it ever was under Trump, with an economy facing supply chain challenges and Putin's war on Ukraine. That's steady leadership under pressure from President Biden, and nothing short of, yes, historic.
Great video. And I love that. Again, there's the contrast, somebody presenting the facts, and then you have the MAGA apologist saying, no, it was all pre-pandemic recovery. It's not true. As of August of 2022, the jobs that were lost under Donald Trump had been recovered. Okay. So even then, President Biden's average monthly job creation is just simply objectively better than Donald Trump's. As a matter of fact, there's a more recent article that was written by the Washington Monthly. So there's a reasonable argument that a more accurate picture of job creation under Trump and Biden should set aside the collapse in employment from the early pandemic and the bounce back from that collapse in 2021. Even so, Biden beats Trump handily. Under Biden, from January 2022 to December 2023, employment grew at an average annual rate of 2.4% compared to a 1.5% rate under Trump from January 2017 to February 2020. That's another Biden win, this time by a margin of 60%. So even when you factor, you control for the pandemic, Biden's average job creation numbers are higher than Trump's, even if you control for the pandemic. And by the way, we actually saw job creation that was higher in the past 3 years, I believe, of Obama's second term compared to the first 3 years of Trump's term. So no matter how you look at it, if you want to go to the Democrat before Trump or the Democrat after Trump, the economic record with job creation is just better, even if you control for the pandemic. But what happens is Republicans, again, try to do this thing where you can't count the last year of Trump's term because it was the pandemic. And apparently, as the chief executive, according to Republicans, Trump had no obligation to manage the pandemic well or the ensuing, the ensuing economic fallout. None of that can be attributed to him. That's their logic. But President Biden is single-handedly responsible for global inflation. You see how they try to have it both ways? They're not even consistent internally. Pick a standard. Do we absolve presidents from these, catastrophic events, global inflation, a pandemic? Or do we say that they have to play a role in managing these, catastrophic situations wherever they can? Instead, they go even further and they say, no, when it comes to Republicans, they're not responsible. They don't have to do anything during global or, national catastrophes. We get to grade them on a curve. When a Democrat's in office, we blame them for everything, even things that are meaningfully outside their control. And that was why when Speaker Pelosi snapped, when Katy Tur said, well, he had to manage, he being Trump, a global pandemic. So what? Number one, again, I keep going back to this. Imagine the shoe on the other foot. Imagine a counterfactual, whereas President Obama or President Biden or President Clinton, whoever, who had to manage COVID, would Republicans, would Fox News, would conservatives factor that in? Would they say, you know what? As much as we don't like the Democrats, We can't blame them for a global pandemic. So we're basically going to give them a mulligan for their last year in office. Of course not. They would never say that. They would say correctly that whoever is occupying the White House has an obligation to try to manage these things well. But they don't say it when one of their own is in office during a catastrophe. Then the rules change. I say no. And I would encourage you to say no too. Reject the false, the asymmetry, the double standard. Say no, we're going to hold everybody to one standard, Democrat or Republican. And I'm sorry that when we do that, your guy tends to lose on the merits. Maybe it's because you guys suck and we shouldn't actually grade on a curve to accommodate your weakness, your stupidity, your frailty, the weakness of your policies. That's what I propose. So even if you control for the pandemic, President Biden's job record, his record on average monthly jobs created, is better than Donald Trump's. And you have to reject, say, even if I grant you your absurd premise, Biden still wins. And as that video pointed out, the pandemic recovery was under President Biden's leadership. He does get credit for that. I do give Joe Biden credit for leading the recovery of the pandemic that Donald Trump mismanaged, as should anybody. Last thing I want to do here is play this clip. President Biden at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, in which, and it's relevant not so much to the jobs and the debate about jobs and average monthly job creation, but it really goes to Katy Tur and other members of the media and how they report on facts. This was President Biden's fair challenge to the press at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
On the third anniversary of January 6th, I went to Valley Forge, and I said the most urgent question of our time is whether democracy is still the sacred cause of America. That is the question the American people must answer this year. And you, the press, play a critical role in making sure the American people have the information they need to make an informed decision. A defeated former president has made no secret of his attack on our democracy. He said he wants to be a dictator on day one, and so much more. He tells supporters he is their revenge and retribution. When in God's name have you ever heard of another president say something like that? And he promised a bloodbath when he loses again. We have to take this seriously. 8 years ago, you could have written off it as just Trump talk, but no longer, not after January 6th. I'm sincerely not asking of you to take sides, but asking you to rise up to the seriousness of the moment. Move past the horse race numbers and the gotcha moments and the distractions, the sideshows that have come to dominate and sensationalize our politics. And focus on what's actually at stake. And I think in your hearts you know what's at stake. The stakes couldn't be higher. Every single one of us has a role to play, a serious role to play, in making sure democracy endures, American democracy. I have my role, but with all due respect, so do you. In the age of disinformation, credible information that people can trust is more important than ever. And that makes you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, makes you more important than ever. So tonight, I'd like to make a toast to a free press.
Doesn't insult them, doesn't bash them, gives them a frank, a frank warning, a frank call out, a frank reminder, not a warning like a threat, but listen, democracy is at stake here. And it is incumbent on you, even if you disagree with Democrats on policy, to also frame the situation honestly. And I would argue Katy Tur didn't do that when she said, Trump had a pandemic to manage. That's true, but he mismanaged it, and he mismanaged it poorly. And that should have been the second thing that you said, Katy Tur, if you're trying to contextualize the situation. So again, great moment by President Biden, great moment by Speaker Pelosi in terms of, again, pushing back on that. Again, folks, you are not obligated to adhere to the Republicans' double standard. You are not obligated to play by the right wing's asymmetry. I argue, I submit to you, that you and I each, every single one of us, have a role to play in breaking that asymmetry and forcing everybody on the right, the left, Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives, everybody, to adhere to one damn standard, one, and then evaluate accordingly. And it just so happens that if you do that, Republicans tend to lose more often than not. But that's on them. And you're not obligated to grade them on a curve simply because Republican politicians are too stupid and corrupt and have terrible ideas to actually compete in the marketplace of ideas on the merits. That's on them. Let me know what you think in the comments.